I'm trying to finish up work on some suggestion boxes that have been eating up my workbench space for way too long. And this is the prototype piece made from flame box elder. And despite the mistakes, it turned out nice enough that I think it's going to be a keeper. So I'm working on fixing some minor details right now. And one of which is the tunnels left from the box elder beetles. I think these look kind of ugly on the face of the door since they were mostly concentrated on one side. And there were also some in the body of the box as well. And this one is patched with epoxy mixed with some red dye. And I think it kind of turned out okay. It just looks pretty strong. I'm not sure if I really like that, but I think it's okay on the side of the box there. On this side, I had some that I followed the same approach with epoxy mixed with red dye. That one looks okay right there. It's small and it's in a corner. Over here, a lot of them looked more like that. It just kind of stood out too much, a little bit too red compared to the pink in the box elder wood. And there were 5 right here in close proximity that just stood out too much, being all on one side of the frame. So I wanted to try to hide those ones a little bit. On my 5th attempt now, I've drilled these out and repatched them at least 5 times. This was one of the latest attempts that used sawdust mixed with super glue. And mostly because of the black ring that's around it, I think it still stands out too much. It kind of looks like the holes were made by a nail gun and filled in with some wood putty. So I'm going to try that one again also. I also used sawdust mixed with wood glue. I used a white glue mixed with sawdust, and none of those really turned out quite right. So this is the last one that I tried, and I think that one is okay. And I'm going to do that again for these other 2. I'm not sure if I should have used the pink or stuck with the lighter color that's in this channel of wood right there, but I'm going to keep going with the pink and demonstrate the process that I use just in case it helps you out, or if you have any better ideas of how I should have done this. And when you're patching damage on a piece of wood, it's always a risk to make the damaged area larger, but sometimes that's what you have to do to either blend it in or to get the patch to go in properly. So what I did with this one is I took this little carving tool and I actually elongated the holes. I drilled them out again using a brad point bit, and then I just sliced out these channels to make them a little bit wider and then tapered it off. So it's kind of like an elongated football shape. And I was trying to simulate how it might look in some of these areas of the discoloration where it eventually just tapers off. So now that I got that kind of close to where I want it, the next step is to grab a piece of wood that has some similar grain and just cut off a slice that is as long as the patch. I'm using a 1/4-inch chisel. Let's see if I get this on the first try this time. All right, I got a little curl of wood now. And that looks like it will be just about long, maybe a little short. I might try one more and save this for the last one. Let's see if I can get a longer curl out of there. Maybe that one did it. Yeah, I think that's exactly the same length, but that's okay. I can still work with this. You get that thin curl of wood. It's essentially a piece of veneer. And the next step is to just wet this up with some super glue. Now, I have already sealed this wood with shellac, so I have minimal concerns about getting the glue soaked into the surrounding grain areas and preventing the finish from looking good at the end. I can sand this off and clean it up again before I do the final finishing. And then I'm just going to lay this right inside that channel. That one's a little bit thick, but that's okay. And I'll put this one right here. And then I'm going to get a popsicle stick or something similar and just squeeze it down in there. And this is a pretty thin piece of wood, so it's going to, that one might actually be a little thick. Nah, it'll be okay. I want it to conform to the shape of that groove that I hollowed out. There we go. Now I'm going to keep this thing moving. As long as I'm going sideways and not trying to pull straight up. See, if you pull straight up, you're going to lose it. But if you can go sideways, it will eventually stick inside that groove or it's not going to do it now because I'm filming. We'll see. That's starting to stick. Just keep working that in there and squeezing out the excess glue. I just switched over to a clean part of the popsicle stick because it was starting to stick a little bit. And that one I think is all right. I'm going to take a little sliver more. Oh, might be too late for this round. There we go. Take another little sliver while that glue is still a little bit wet. I'm going to put that on top and do the same thing. I'll bring this one over here. I'm just kind of layering it now, just because there's still a little bit of wet glue in there, squeezing it down on the existing patch. And one thing that this is getting me that's kind of advantageous is that it's the same species of wood and the grain is running in the same direction. So it's kind of almost as if you were to use a plug, cut with a plug cutter, you would have the grain running in the same direction, but because of the way those channels were cut, this is a little bit more irregular, so it won't be quite as noticeable as, you know, just 3 perfect circles with a plug cutter. That might be good enough. I may even give that's epoxy. I may even give that a little bit more glue right in the middle and try for one more layer on top. And life just got complicated. My finger's sticking. Ow. That always happens. The trick is to pull away and not up. If you slide to the side, it will usually not stick to you too bad. I just want to make sure that there's not a lot of space underneath these. I want to squeeze it into that hole as good as possible, so there's more wood than glue that's filling up the space. All right, well that is probably about as I'm going to get, as good as I'm going to get that for now. Maybe one more little piece right there. And because I squeezed most of that glue out, there's not going to be a lot of time required before I can sand it. So just give that a minute and clean it up. That feels like it's set up pretty well. The next thing I'm going to do is grab a little bit of sandpaper on a block. I'm going to start out with some I think this is 240. I'm going to try not to scratch up the rest of the wood because I have that sanded to 320. But I just want to get away some of the bulk of this. I might go to a chisel. This is a little bit more risky, but I got a lot of wood on the surface. I think I can just shave some of that away. Close enough. I think I can switch over to sandpaper again at this point. I'll use a fresh sheet of 320. Got to keep an eye on it because that super glue is going to gunk up the paper pretty quickly. And once you get some hardened super glue on the sandpaper, it can start to gouge your wood a little bit. That is almost done. Yeah, see, I don't want to use these spots anymore because they're not going to sand. They're just going to mess things up. All right, let's wipe that off, see what we got. And let's give it a little blast of shellac, or wipe of shellac. All right, well, I am not 100% certain that that's the best option. I think it might have been better to go with the lighter wood in here, but I still think that the color is more natural on that, and it looks better than these guys right here. After staring at it some more, I decided I wasn't quite happy enough with that one to publish the video, so I cut this out 2 more times and tried again. The last time was a little bit too light, and this time I think it turned out okay. I also patched these ones here with some wood that was similar to this green color. You can still see a little bit of the CA glue darker on the sides. I think that's a combination of shadow and maybe some end grain from the sawdust mixed in there. Not real thrilled about that, but I think it's good enough that I'm going to leave it. And this was my prototype piece. It was kind of fun to play around with it. On these ones right here, I found some wood that matched more closely this grain color. And I ended up with a few dark lines around the perimeter from the CA glue. And I scraped those out carefully with an X-Acto knife. And then I put a little Type Bond 2, the yellow stuff in there. The Type Bond 3, I think, was going to be a little bit too dark. So I used the Type Bond 2 mixed with a little bit of the box elder sawdust, and I just sanded over it. And the sawdust mixed in with the glue and filled in those borders and made them a bit lighter. And then as the final step, I took some of the dye that I used originally to mix with the epoxy, and I just put a tiny little bit on the end of this popsicle stick, and I used that to extend the lines in a few places and to blend this in with this existing line right there. Just kind of blend it in. Sometimes a good way to hide a patch is to you see that border around it where there's a difference in color, but if you extend a color going through that patch, it kind of tricks the mind into thinking that this is not a different thing from the rest of this. It's just a figured area of wood. So that is the final attempt. I'm pretty sure I can get it better than that, but I really should consider actually fixing my washing machine sooner or later. So this was a nice distraction in the meantime, though, so hopefully that was helpful. And once again, if you have any ideas of different techniques that work well for this, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.